Wednesday is considered an advisement day, a day where you can come and either speak to your advisors or your instructors on whatever, okay? So, if you have no need, then you don't need to come on Wednesday. I will be in my office at least during the morning, just because I have like other stuff to do. So if you need to come in and speak with me, just let me know, and I'll keep the door open. Otherwise, I'll just be in there, at least during the morning until lunchtime, whatever. So, but don't come to your classes Wednesday. I mean, you can if you want, but nobody will be here.
There's no classes Wednesday?
No.
I'm glad that you told me because I would have been here. I would have been a little bit cross.
Okay.
When is the final contract?
The 9th. Okay. Alrighty, so we talked about Islam on Friday, some of the beginnings, looking at just some of the basics, and once again, not here to preach or speak against it. Bless you. And whether you have faith or not or whatever, just looking at the historical facts. Number one, before Islam, Arabs were a divided people. They lived according to tribes and clans, blood feuds. They were polytheistic. They believed in, different types of spirits and gods and whatnot. Around the year 580-ish, a man named Muhammad is born, and by all accounts, he's just an average person. He takes a job on caravans that go up and down the Arabian Peninsula, eventually marrying his boss and taking over the business. He is recorded as having been a very spiritual person, so he embarked on many, I guess what you could call vision quests, going into the mountains to pray, to try to figure out the meaning of life. And on one of these journeys, he has a vision where the archangel Gabriel comes to him and tells him basically, number one, some of the same basic messages as other monotheistic groups: love, charity, help other people, do what's right. That's what I just put, etc. Okay. Number two, that there's only one God, all right, Allah, and that, polytheism is wrong and everyone should follow this one God. And of course, number three, that Muhammad needs to go out and preach these things to not only the Arab people, but also to Jews and Christians, because they are also, quote-unquote, people of the book. This is my spiritual cousins, that in some way, shape, or form, either directly or whatever, through their religion, they are all basically the same, descended from Abraham, and that in the thousands of years of Judaism and the hundreds of years of Christianity, the message has somehow been corrupted, and so, and remember this is in 612, and along the way, Muhammad needs to bring back the full message, okay? And so we talked about how at first he experiences failure, nobody wants to listen. Eventually he does experience success and people begin to follow his message. Eventually Islam spreads not only throughout the Arabian Peninsula, but of course it goes beyond that. And amongst the many things that it does unite the Arabic people. No more blood feuds, no more disputes, no more divisions. They all come under the rule of Muhammad. We'll talk a little bit more about this word in a minute, because we see what happens is that he calls it an Ummah, but we see the formation of a theocracy, a state where all of the political stuff is all based on spiritual or religious laws, okay? So it's not just, murder is bad, so you kill someone, you go to jail, whatever. But according to my religion, you have to pray to the Great Pumpkin, and Madison did not pray to the Great Pumpkin, so we're going to throw Madison in jail, okay? Because that is a crime. We're using our religion, our spiritual stuff to judge people politically, okay? Now, as I said, Islam spreads throughout Arabia and beyond, okay? It does eventually extend into many of the surrounding areas, okay? Now, what is the appeal, then, of Islam to not only the Arabic people, but to the other people that are, converted to it, okay? Number one is the simplicity of the 5 pillars. And yes, you do need to be familiar with these, okay? The 5 pillars of Islam. All right, number 1, bearing witness. If you're Christian, I guess you can use your terminology, testify, okay? There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet, okay? Number 2, alms to the poor. You basically, the whole kindness and love and charity and, try to help out those less fortunate than you, all right? Number 3, you have to pray 5 times a day, all right? And I guess if you're religious, that shouldn't be too difficult, I suppose. The last 2 are things that are done less frequently. During Ramadan, during the month of Ramadan, you fast during the daylight hours. You abstain from food and drink, okay? I believe Ramadan just ended like 2 weeks ago, okay? And then finally, at least once in your lifetime, okay, you should visit Mecca, all right? Beyond that, and now, remember, we're talking about Islam in the early 600s. Okay, we're not talking 2025. But beyond that, there really is no other things you have to worry about. It's fairly simple to follow. Okay, yeah, I guess I can, just bear witness. I can testify there is no God but Allah. All right, yeah, I help poor people. I give my spare change, Once again, I'm pretty spiritual, so 5 times, okay, I can pray 5 times. All right, not that big of a deal. Okay, this is, all right, I love food, but this is only once a year, okay? I guess I can do that once a year, and it's only when the sun's out, okay? Once the sun goes down, I'm hitting the buffet, and, I guess I can go to Mecca, once. That's all you gotta do, all right? So pretty, we can do that. Now, one thing about Islam, especially, and I think this is where we finished off last time. In 632, Muhammad passes away. Muhammad dies. There is no central leadership. There is no pope. There is no patriarch. There is no whatever. Okay? With the death of Muhammad, Muhammad is considered the last prophet. So with his death, there's advisors. There's like smart people. All right, maybe, Ed here, he's, pretty knowledgeable, so I go to him for advice. But the majority of Islam, at least, once again, in the 600s, is between you and Allah, you and your God. That's it, okay? You don't got to go confess to Father Ed here, you don't got to listen to the rules of, the great Mother Madison here. It's like, you don't got to do any of that, okay? And so, as I mentioned, okay, one of the things that the spread of Islam does, especially amongst the Arab people, is that it unites them. It brings them together. They give up their old traditions, not just the polytheism, but the warfare, the tribal blood feuds, all of that, okay, and they become one. All right? Now, yes, Muhammad is the last prophet. All right, nobody comes after him. So the rest, Muslims, all you got to do is, do this, be good with Allah. You need advice, you go to Ken because, he's pretty spiritual. But other than that, we're pretty much there. Okay? Now, remember, Muhammad has also created a theocracy. Okay? We still have a government. Okay? That needs taken care of. Now, granted, that government is ruled by the spiritual rules. Okay? But we still need the government to function. So, with Muhammad's death, who is going to be in charge of this state? Because it has become a state. Okay? Now, once again, as far as the religion goes, we're all on our own, and that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay? Politically, though, what ends up happening is that Muhammad's father-in-law becomes the next leader of the Arab people. Okay? Now, he takes the title of Caliph, and Caliph just means, the next guy, all right, the successor to the prophet, all right, number one. Number two, the state or the kingdom, for lack of a better term, it's not really a kingdom, but for lack of an easier term here, is known as the caliphate. Okay, and like I said, because it is a theocracy, all right. Yes, we've got politics, we've got finances, we've got internal stuff, we've got road building, we've got the day-to-day stuff of running a country, but all of it is dictated by Islam, the rules of Islam, the faith, the spirituality, all of that stuff. Okay? And so, in this case, then, we see that religious authority and that political authority as one. Even though technically this isn't there. But it is. Okay? Now, I'll just preach just for a little bit here. We do see this today in that there are certain groups who want to use their religious beliefs to dictate political agendas, which whenever someone says, and once again, no offense, but the Bible says, I don't give a fuck what the Bible says, because, I'll edit that out later, because we're not a theocracy, okay? Our laws shouldn't be governed by what the Bible says, okay? It's supposed to be separate, okay? Now, someone, has used the example, just because your religion doesn't allow you to do certain things, well, great. You do you do that, okay? But I'm going to do me, okay? Type of thing. It's like saying, your religion doesn't allow you to eat donuts, and so because of that, you're not going to let Mr. Santos eat donuts. Well, we're going to have problems there, because I like donuts, as you can tell, okay? All right? Now, after Muhammad, there are 4 different caliphs that rule. We're jumping ahead like about 100 years now. There are, and these are, supposedly the good caliphs, because we will enter some political drama here in a second. Even if you are, guided by spiritual laws, there's the human element, which will always mess things up. Okay? But by this point in time, Islam and the government are like this, they're intertwined, and so yes, the caliphate is expanding, the political stuff is growing, but the religious is there as well, because that's the nature of a theocracy. All right? So, what ends up happening is that as the caliphate expands politically, obviously, it's also going to expand religiously, right? Because once again, we're guided by certain spiritual laws, okay? And of course, how does a nation, a state, a kingdom, a country, whatever, expand? Conquest. All right, they go out and they're conquering other areas. They're conquering other groups. All right. Now, once again, they are driven by a religious ideal. All right, because they are a theocracy. Okay, and so now this becomes kind of a bad word in English because the term is jihad. And yes, one translation, okay, from Arabic to English is holy war, okay? And I suppose if your country is a theocracy and you are fighting with other groups, it could be considered a holy war, all right? But the word jihad has many meanings. It could also, mean strive or struggle or, things like that. So that while one interpretation is a military conquest with the end goal of bringing you to Islam, another interpretation could be that struggle that each one of us goes through, okay? Figuring out who you are, what your purpose in life is, and of course, if you're a religious person, oh my God, there's temptation everywhere, and I'm trying to be a better person, but here's this tempting me to do wrong, and oh my gosh, I gotta pray, and I gotta go to church and do all this stuff. It could also be that type of thing, but we're not here to discuss your spiritual problems. We're here to discuss history. All right, and so in this quote-unquote holy war, all right, the caliphate quickly conquers and unites most of Arabia, okay, and once they come out of Arabia, the first nation that they encounter are the Byzantines, the Byzantine Empire from the east, okay. Very, very quickly, they are able to conquer Egypt, and they are able to conquer, modern-day Palestine, what we would call the Middle East. All right. Once they reach Anatolia, the Byzantine army is finally able to slow them down. And so, because of the landscape, and of course, like I said, the Byzantine army, they're unable to push too far into Anatolia. And so they head east. And now, they're conquering other groups. They quickly overrun Mesopotamia, and most importantly, they are able to conquer all of Persia. All right. So within less than 100 years after the death of Muhammad, okay, the caliphate has expanded from this, the dark green, which is where it was when Muhammad died, to everything you see in stripes, green. That is what was conquered after his death. And like I said, it all happened in less than about 100 years. Okay, so Egypt, parts of North Africa, what today would be Palestine in the Middle East, Mesopotamia, and then, of course, pretty much most of Persia. Okay, so the caliphate has expanded. All right, now we reach our next political crisis. Okay, Muhammad dies. There are four people after him. The first one is his father-in-law. We don't care about him. They're not better, at least not to us today. The very last one, the fourth one, is a man named Ali. Okay, when Ali dies, all right, he doesn't name a successor. Okay, up until this time, basically the previous caliph names who's going to follow him. Okay, I'm really sick. I'm about to die. All right, Destiny is going to be the next ruler of this kingdom. All right, and so Destiny rules, and that actually sounds like Destiny rules. No, and then eventually, as Destiny is close to death, we'll name the next person, the next successor. Okay, well, Ali dies without naming one, and so we have a power vacuum. Nobody knows who should take over. one of the families, one of the clans, the Umayyads, okay, they make a claim and they are able to unite enough people so that they are able to take control, all right? So it's not just one person, it is a family that comes together. Obviously, you know, the head of the family will be the new caliph, but they are able to take over the leadership of the caliphate. And the first thing they do, because up until now, the capital had been at Mecca, all right? Mecca was both the political and the spiritual capital. They moved the capital to Damascus, which is a city in Syria. It still exists, it's still there today, or what's left of it. Syria's been through like major civil war over the last 20 years, but to Damascus, okay? And to avoid something like this, they make it a hereditary thing, all right? So, the four caliphs after Muhammad, they each named their successor, except for Ali, who died before he could do it. And so in order to avoid that, and to keep the Umayyad family in power, we're going to do it like, you know, oldest son, oldest son, oldest son, oldest son. We're going to make it like a kingdom now. Okay? So at this point, we can call it a kingdom. I mean, it's still a caliphate, but now it becomes a legit kingdom. All right? The other thing that happens under the Umayyads, all right, and I need to go back to the map, is that they have conquered a lot of non-Arabic people. Okay? Arabs are from here, but they've conquered a lot of area outside of there. Okay? The Umayyads, and here we see one of the first divisions religiously / politically, in that only Arabs are given preferred treatment. Only Arabs are seen as worthy of, you know, holding these important positions of power. Okay? Non-Arabs are given some responsibility, okay, but not quite the same. And so we see this first division, all right, between Arabs and non-Arabs, all right? And yeah, it happens with all groups. It happens with all religions. It happens with all, you know, ethnic groups. It doesn't really matter, okay? At some point, you're going to get one group that sees themselves as being better than the others, okay? And so, as I said, the Umayyads see the non-Arab people that they conquer as being inferior, okay? Even after they convert to Islam, they still see them as inferior, okay? Which, you know, is no, doesn't matter which religious group you are, okay? Seems to be something common amongst a lot of, you know, groups when they go out and conquer others, okay? By this point in time, we are now in the middle 700s. There are only about 300,000 Arabs in the caliphate, but there are over 30 million non-Arabs. So they're obviously a minority, okay, but they're still holding on to all the power. Okay, now, as we see, no matter what group, okay, eventually when you conquer, you know, I guess we could call it an empire, all right? When you start conquering an empire, all right, eventually there is going to be some mixing. There is going to be intermarriage between the groups. And so in an area known as Khorasan, which is in modern-day Iran, we begin to see a lot of the Arab conquerors begin to marry the local Persian women. Okay, for some reason Persian women have been doing this for hundreds of years. Okay, Alexander fell in love with them, and so now these Arab men are falling in love with them. And so we begin to see then this mixing of culture and faiths and ideals. And so, you know, I mean, it's a little bit harder to discriminate if, you know, hey, dude, my wife is Persian and my kids are half Persian. You know, what do you mean, you know, Persians suck and Arabs rule or whatever, okay? And so, we get another family, the Abbasi family, okay, who takes advantage of this, Okay, number one, they claim to be descended from Muhammad. Okay, now that we're treating this like a kingdom, all right, where the Umayyads, father to son, father to son, father to son, okay, they begin to claim, well, we're blood relatives of the prophet, of Muhammad. So we should have been ruling all along, okay? And of course, they are able to bring together a lot of people that have been, disenfranchised and whatever by the Umayyads, specifically some of the non-Arabs, okay? And so, around 750, the Abbasids are able to overthrow the Umayyads, okay? They lead a revolution against them. The first thing that they do is that they move the capital to Baghdad, okay? So Mecca, Damascus, Baghdad, okay? And they establish a caliphate that lasts for almost 500 years, okay? Now, a couple of things, all right? Even though they took power by getting together some of these marginalized groups, as you will see throughout history, once they were in power, they kind of turned their back on the groups that helped put them in power. Okay, they were better than the Umayyads, but they still didn't grant full equality to non-Arabs. Okay, number one. Number two, one of the other differences, and the whole purpose of conquest changes, because up until this point, and remember once again, it is a theocracy, okay? The caliphate is conquering because that's what countries do, okay? It just so happens that we are a Muslim country, and so, if you want to be good with us, then you convert to Islam. And remember, Islam was popular because, it's pretty simple, all right? You don't got to do, the whole, praying and not eating. That's only once a year. Prayer's okay. I can do 5 prayers. All right? But otherwise, it's a pretty simple thing. You don't got to worry about the Pope or whatever, okay? But under the Abbasids, they're like, no. We have to conquer to spread Islam. We're not just conquering to conquer and then hope that the people convert. We need to go out there and conquer with the specific purpose of converting people. Okay? Once you're under our control, you have to listen to our message. Okay? Because once again, remember, they are a theocracy. All right? Now, just as an FYI, despite this goal, they did not force conversions. Even I was taught this when I was in your seat, 30 years ago, that they went in, and then if someone didn't convert, they'd cut their heads off, and so they were, forcibly converted at the threat of a sword. They actually weren't, okay? Yes, you were forced to listen to the message, okay? But you were free to reject it, okay? Granted, you might be discriminated against, and, you might not get all of the key positions, but you weren't forcibly converted, okay? One of the things that you did have to do, though, is we all love taxes, right? Everybody does. No, okay, nobody's agreeing with me. All right, maybe we don't. Okay? Is that if you were non-Muslim, you had to pay an extra tax. It was known as the jizya. All right? You don't need to remember that, but you had to pay it. Okay? And you know how you get out of paying that extra tax? Convert to Islam. All right? You want to save money on your taxes? Join the state religion. Okay? You want to keep paying this extra tax? Fine. Ed could be a Christian. We don't care. But, you got to pay your tax. Okay? Ed says, you know what? I'm sick of paying this tax. Ed suddenly is like, hey, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Boom, I'm a Muslim now. Okay? And no more taxes. Okay? Now, the thing is, though, is just as an FYI, other than the money, okay, other than lower taxes, okay, Islam, and once again, we're talking about the 700s, was in fact an improvement for a lot of people. Okay? Once again, this is all you really have to do. All right? We're not asking a whole lot. All right? There is no, once again, no pope, no patriarch, no whatever, with strange rules like you can't eat meat on Fridays and shit like that. You know, it's like you just, you do your thing, and that's it. Okay, and so in a lot of cases, whether for financial reasons or just because it was better for them, a lot of people did convert. But we still had that question of how Arab should these people be, because once again, even though the Abbasids won their power with this promise and under these motives, they do eventually turn their back on the groups that helped put them into power. Okay? Now, we come to the next division, because the caliphate eventually gets really, really, really big. Okay? And it does expand, and I'm trying to find the map, I apologize. Where are you? Okay? It does expand all the way from Spain into India. Okay? It's huge. It's impossible to rule something that big uniformly. Especially back then, it's not like today where you have like instant media and you can communicate with places, right away. And so, in a lot of places, okay, we begin to see, and this is what begins to happen, number one, Islam begins to change, okay? And that happens to any religion, all right? Even though, once again, the message of Islam was that we're bringing you the pure, unaltered word, that Jews and Christians have kind of messed up over the last couple hundred years. In original Arabic tradition, okay, one example is that Arabic women had a little bit more influence, just in the sense that when a man and a woman married, men, you married into your wife's tribe, okay? You became associated with her family. As opposed to, in most cultures today, ladies, you take on your husband's name, your husband's identity, whatever. Okay? Well, back then, Arab men assumed their wife's family's identity. When Islam encounters, all of these different cultures, especially Persian culture, okay, all of this begins to change, and we begin to add other kinds of stuff that you have to start doing, okay? Now, one of the things, okay, remember Persia allowed as many wives as you want, men. The only catch is, you have to be able to, support each of them equally. You can't have one live in a really nice house and the other one be homeless, okay? They all have to live, in the same type of stuff. Well, when Arabs encounter Persian culture, it's like, oh, we like this part. All right? So that begins to be adopted into not just Arab culture, but into Islamic culture. So that, of course, we got to put a limit. They do set some different boundaries. So it's not as many women as you can support. You can only have 4. Once you reach 4, I don't care how rich you are, Aiden. No, that's it. You only get 4 wives. Got to leave some for the rest of us. Okay? So, but the rule is still there, okay? You got to be able to support them equally. Another one, I don't have it up there, but, the whole concept of covering your face, and, we've seen Muslim women that do, that's a Persian tradition. That's not an Arabic tradition. That's not a Muslim thing either. That is strictly a Persian custom. But once Arabs and Islam encounter Persia, and they mix, suddenly we begin to see those type of rules popping up. Okay? So, All right, we begin to see these changes over time. Okay, now it is during the Abbasid period. All right, and this is the 500 years that we. This is what we call the 500 years of Abbasid rule. Okay, number one, we see an explosion of the arts, which we hadn't really seen under Muhammad or under the Caliphs or under the Umayyads. All right. Sometimes religion doesn't really lend itself all that much to art. Okay. In this case, though, it does, especially under the Abbasi family. All right. Number one. Number two. After almost 1,500 years in the Muslim world, people begin to start using Greek less and less as the language of culture, as the language of education. And Arabic becomes, that language. Okay? Now, that's not to say that they completely eliminated everything, okay? Because, this is another thing. These Muslim kingdoms understood the importance of knowledge and the importance that the Greeks and the Romans, the contributions that they had provided, how important it was. Once again, the Romans were some of the greatest engineers in history. They understood that, and, okay, so fine. Maybe they didn't believe in Allah. Maybe they were polytheistic heathens who worshipped, Jupiter and, Mars and stuff like that, okay? But they knew how to build aqueducts, and they knew how to build roads, so this stuff's worthy of preserving and translating into Arabic, so that, we can, build on that, all right? Muslims had no qualms about other cultures, even if they weren't Islamic. Fine, you don't believe in what we do, but damn, you make some good paper, all right? Chinese paper was pretty good, okay? Yes, the Romans had it, other groups had it, but there was something different, okay? Muslim doctors in the Middle Ages understood the nature of infection. Okay, from the different texts that they were able to gather, both ancient Greek, ancient Chinese, Indian, they were able to come up with various theories. And they knew that if Ed got sick, there was something that was inside of him that was making him sick. And while we can take care of some of the symptoms, what we really need to do is eliminate that whatever. Okay? During this same period, Europeans thought you got sick because you had too much blood inside of you. So that's why during the Middle Ages, people did bloodlettings, or even more fun. Let's just put a couple leeches on Ed, because what will the leeches do? Suck the blood out, and after a good leeching, he's going to feel better. All right? Surprise, surprise, Ed's getting sicker. Sorry, Ed. Well, fuck, maybe we need to put more leeches on him. Okay, type of thing. And so, they understood the nature of infection and disease. And so they were much further ahead of other areas when it came to medicine. And finally, you guys can say thank you, okay? Much of the numbering system and the math that we do is because of Arab mathematicians, okay? They developed a number system based on tens, which is the, early formation of the metric system, okay, because it is based on powers of 10, all right? Now, there's other groups that did this, and I'm just going to shout out to my people, specifically the Mayas, but it was the Arabs that also came up with the idea of zero, okay? Not even the Romans, for all their engineering prowess, had something to represent nothing, okay? So that idea, that concept, okay, started with them. And finally, all right, I did that, and we do shit like this, okay? Those are Arab numbers, okay? Without the Arabs, we'd still be doing something like this. And while these are fairly easy to decipher, anyone know what ID is?
4.
Thank you. VI?
6.
IX? 9. Okay, yeah, see, it takes a minute. But, you know, and don't get me on NNCVXY. Yeah. We'd still be doing this shit, okay? Although I suppose it'd be a lot, I mean, we'd be used to it, right? So we could do, I can't imagine doing like multiplication, you know, I times ID, you know, like weird shit like that. So the numbers we use are Arabic numbers, okay, that they came up with. Things like geometry and algebra and trigonometry, that's, you know, all math that was developed by Arabic mathematicians, okay? So all of this happens during this time period, okay? Now, like I said, with so many people and expanding all the way from Spain into, you know, almost India, okay? It is impossible, all right, to keep everything together, especially back then, all right? And so, and especially with so much outside influence, because remember, by now, only a very, very, very small group of them are actually Arab, okay? Everybody else is non-Arab, all right? And so just to give you a hint here, in the east, okay, Muslim armies conquered all of Persia, all right? They conquered all of modern-day Afghanistan, and they conquered the western part of what today would be technically India, but it's actually Pakistan, okay? So they made it all the way to the borders with India, okay? In Africa, after they conquered Egypt, they basically just swept across all of northern Africa, all the way to the Atlantic, all right? The Sappers, why didn't they head south? Well, you got a big ass desert that makes it hard to sweep across the desert. But they did spread Islam in other ways, okay? And then finally, once these armies conquered all of North Africa, once they made it to what today would be Morocco, from the northern point of Morocco to the southern point of Spain, it's only like 6 miles, 6 or 7 miles. So it's not like that far. Those armies then just crossed over into southern Spain and invaded Spain in the year 711. Okay, they are virtually unstopped for about 20 years. They make it all the way into southern France. They aren't stopped until they get to a city called Tours, and at the Battle of Tours, a Frankish general named Charles Martel is finally able to stop them, to stop this invasion, and so these Muslim armies go back to Spain, and they establish various kingdoms throughout modern-day Spain, but they don't enter the rest of Europe. Okay? Now, we will talk about Charles in a minute, maybe on Friday. Okay? Sorry, checking the time. All right? But he does become an important, well, not him, but his grandson becomes an important person in European history. Okay? So, what happens when you have such a widespread kingdom? Okay? It's impossible to keep it all together. All right? You're not going to be able to. Okay? I already showed you this map. All right? So all the way from Spain, all of North Africa, all of Arabia, all of Persia, and then, of course, all the way into, this is modern-day Pakistan, and then, like, into parts of India. So what begins to happen? Okay? Well, before we get to that, okay, one of the things, and we'll end with this today, all right, when the Muslims enter Spain, okay, they find a kingdom in the middle of, like, the Middle Ages, and, you know, doing what most other parts of Europe are doing at the time, okay? The Muslims come in, and they build these enormous, beautiful cities. They see the Roman architecture and the Roman aqueducts, and they expand on them, okay? I shared with a couple friends, there is a city in southern Spain called Segovia that has a functioning Roman aqueduct still, 2,000 years later, okay? Because, right, the Muslim invaders were able to come in and preserve those things and expand on them. All right, and so they brought their knowledge of medicine and math, and they combined it with the old Roman, engineering principles. And so there's a city in central Spain called Cordoba that eventually becomes the capital of the Muslim kingdom in Spain. They build this ginormous mosque, all right, in the city. The mosque is still there. It is now a tourist attraction slash Catholic cathedral. I chuckle a little bit because you can see where the Muslims built, and then you can see it's like a distinct, almost night and day, where after the Christians took over again, they added, but it's like a Catholic style. Okay, so it's kind of this weird mixture. But at the Great Mosque, you can pay, you go in, you can tour the whole thing. But there are gardens and running water and aqueducts and pools and fountains, and it's just this thing of beauty and inspiration. Okay, and of course, yeah, they took over. Yeah, they preached Islam, but and they were there for 700 years. For the next 700 years, there was peace between Christians and Jews and Muslims. Okay, Christians and Jews, you're paying extra tax, but otherwise, we're all good, okay? And everyone was prosperous and everything, advanced and progressed. And some of you know that I also teach Spanish here, and so here at MV. And I tell people that about 30% of modern Spanish is actually Arabic in origin because of this. After 700 years, because that's how long Muslims were in Spain, you can't have a language not be affected. All right. In Central Asia, the Muslim armies conquered the Sogdian kingdom, which, if you recall, they were one of those groups that controlled the passageways through the Silk Road, and so they made their money by offering protection and basically charging a toll for people to bring their merchandise through. Well, now that they convert to Islam, they want to advance the cause of Islam. And so all of the wealth that they had built up and all of the wealth that they continued to gain from merchants, from charging them, protection money and access money, they sent it all to Baghdad to make sure that, hey, there'll always be money so that, you can spread, the word. Okay? And of course, they began to collect all kinds of writings. It didn't matter what it was. They sent it to Baghdad so that it could be translated into Arabic, thereby expanding, on the knowledge and on the learning and on the math and the medicine and everything else. Okay? And so, once again, this is how these areas get so much farther ahead than Europe at the time. In fact, it is during this time period, and it is because of the Sogdians, that Muslim doctors published one of the first medical textbooks, Canon of Medicine, so that, you can look stuff up, like diseases and things or whatever. It becomes like the first medical reference book. All right? I will stop right there. No class on Wednesday. Do not show up, Ed, or else you're going to be... you're going to be sitting outside by yourself, because I ain't coming. All right? I'm the one who opens the door.